I've had two things on my mind this week. One, zipper underwear, and two, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. And only one of those changed the course of history. It was the second one, the March on Washington for Jobs and for Freedom, which is what this video is about. So let's talk about it.
I be out of reach, I be getting paid, they be trying to beef, I be on the way.
Now, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom is one of the largest political rallies of all time, with over 250,000 people attending. It took place August 28th, 1963, at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. Before we talk about the march itself, I want to talk about the events that led up to the march. Racism is something that's been around for a long time, long before I can get to in this video. But where I want to start is Plessy v. Ferguson. Now, Plessy v. Ferguson is a really interesting case where a black man, who looked white, he was of mixed race, sat on a whites-only bus. And people, called him on it, and they sent him to court, and he argued that what he did wasn't wrong. Segregation shouldn't be constitutional. The nitty-gritty of the court case itself isn't crazy important. What was important was what the courts ruled. And what they ruled was that segregation was constitutional. And this was essentially the nail in the coffin for any hope that black people in America had for just naturally gaining freedom and equality in America. This was kind of the turning point when black people realized that if they wanted freedom and equality in America, that they were going to have to fight for it. So now let's talk about how So now the courts have ruled that segregation is not only allowed, but they actually say that it is protected under the Constitution, which is insane. That's insane because it literally goes against the 14th Amendment, bar for bar. And this means that joie de vivre is at an all-time low. I've actually made a graph to show just how low the joie de vivre is. But to be clear, joie de vivre has been low for a long time now. Just because things are now separate but equal does not mean that, threats, racism, discrimination, and violence against black people has gotten better. In fact, if anything, violence towards black people during this time has only gotten worse. And I know I'm wearing different clothes because it's a different day and the camera is at a weird angle, but that doesn't matter. Because now it's the year 1909, which means that the NAACP is founded, which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And this is what officially starts the change, the shift from a world of segregation to a world of equality and freedom for everybody. And it doesn't slow down from there. Because in the 1920s, the Harlem Renaissance begins, which is this movement that shows black art, music, literature, fashion, politics, dance, and really culture. And it turns into this movement for African American culture. And it shows the world that black people are people too, that they are capable of great things and that they will do great things. For decades, the Harlem Renaissance goes on, and black people show white people that they are just as equally as people, that they are just as capable as anyone else is, and that no one should be better than them, that people shouldn't be separate. And finally, in 1954, we have Brown v. Board of Education, which is a court case which finally rules that no matter how separate but equal things are, it will never be equal. That the only way for people to truly be treated as equals and seen as equals is if things are not separate. So we did it, right? We've ended segregation once and for all. And while the courts did rule that segregation was no longer constitutional and did not have a place in America, the courts didn't actually have any way to enforce this court ruling. So for the South, they just kind of said, no, we're racist, and we're going to keep things segregated. And that wasn't great, because while the courts had ended de jure segregation, which was segregation by law, like it was no longer backed by the law, they did not end de facto segregation, which was segregation in practice. It was still something that very much happened in the South for years after the court ruling.
But I feel some things, I got some pain, I never show.
So now it's the year 1950, and the fight for equality has not slowed down. It's only gotten smarter. It's become a lot more organized, with very famous civil rights activists coming to light and organizing peaceful protests, which we begin to see a lot of in the 1950s. Starting with the Montgomery bus boycott, led by Rosa Parks, which was basically a peaceful protest, or it was more of a strike, where black people basically said that if you're not going to let us sit in your buses, then you can drive them yourself. And this was basically the most well-known peaceful protest because it was led by Rosa Parks, a very famous civil rights activist. And this led to even more peaceful protests happening. Later, we had the very famous sit-in where some black college kids went to a whites-only lunch counter and they refused to leave until they were served their food. And while all they were doing was sitting there and peacefully protesting, they were harassed, threatened, they were beaten, and they were eventually thrown in jail. And all they did was sit there and order food. It was crazy, and this garnered, again, more attention and more support for the movement for equality. We also have all these very famous activists of the time, Martin Luther King Jr., who I'm sure you've heard of, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X, and John Lewis, basically the four horsemen of the civil rights movement. Obviously, there was a lot more people involved, but these are the four main people who really strived and advocated for black freedom and equality in America.
I can't love you like you want me to.
And so finally, the year is 1963 and it's August 28th, and yes, I have new glasses, and what could only be called one of the largest political rallies or peaceful protests or gatherings or whatever you want to call it of all time takes place. And almost 250,000 people show up to this rally, both black and white. And at this rally, we see all these people coming together to show support for this movement that has been building up for a very long time. And we get the very famous I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King Jr. And because of this march, we got the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, just a year and 2 years after the march happened, which showed that peaceful political protest could achieve real change in America. I mean, the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act ended segregation in America. These were two acts that were passed that were able to officially enforce and end all segregation in America, which goes to show just how powerful and how much support this protest and movement had. Now, this by all means did not end racism in America, and I think I want to end on a quote by Nazir Akil, who said that we now have a scoliosystemic racism, not even spineless, where they bend it and hide it with the posture of job interviews. And yeah, that's about it. Mr. B, I worked hard. Please give me an A. I think. I mean, this video is not 4 minutes, so you know, I'm putting effort in. And you saw the images on the screen. Thank you.